This is the first photograph I actually took of her, because it was just...
She's so beautiful.
Incredibly beautiful girl. I mean, incredibly sort of powerful. And she has all of that pent-up anger and injustice that Lee had in so much of his work. There's this feeling that I'll show you. There's that kind of idea that actually it's been an injustice and I'll put it right. And you feel in her expressions and in her sort of power of the emotion behind the expression.
Yeah.
It isn't a vapid look. She doesn't look at you in a kind of pretty, insipid way. There's brooding and fear and resentment and all those emotions, which are often the darker emotions. I mean, she's 16, which is super young for a model, and normally I don't work with models that young. But I remember when I worked with Devon, when I did the picture of Devon with the gash on her forehead and the eye missing. She was 15 or 16 then, and she was a skater kid that turned up at the studio. And just, I think it was a session we were doing for Visionaire. There was 2 or 3 models booked, probably 2. And the other girl was modeling, and she was complaining about putting the stuff on because it was the Hans Bellmer stuff, and everything was difficult. And Devon just sailed through it, and we would do it, whatever, because she loved doing it.
Yeah.
And then, you see that relationship, with Kate, with Karen Elson, with Erin O'Connor, with all the girls all the way through his shows. These are girls, actually, this is what they want to do.
Yeah.
So the models are slightly overlooked, I think, sometimes in this.
Absolutely, because working with you and working with Lee is not easy.
No, we push and push and push. And we also expect, that the person is as committed to making the best image in the world as we are or were.
But actually, that's something that's very much of that time as well. And, I felt that way when I met Lee, and when I met you, who I met through Lee, is that, I worked harder on those texts than any other text I've ever worked on in my life, because I was so happy to be part of it.
Yeah.
So it was a group of people, an extended group a lot of the time, who just were working very hard to make extraordinary things happen. Yeah. And actually, that's amazing.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the piece of clothing.
Again, it's, actually this is interesting about Lee as well, because this is from Banshee, I think, which is very early.
Yeah.
He established his signatures right at the beginning. So he was a tailor.
Yeah.
And this is an amazing tailored military again coat, which it's not here, so I can't try it on, but I suspect it's immaculate. And it's also worn over torn lace, which again is very Lee. So it's the sharpness of the tailoring and then the lace, but always a bit, I don't know if I can say this, fucked up. He always used to say it. Yeah. So he would make these beautiful pieces of clothing and then fuck them up, and his mum would be there backstage saying, "Don't do that to the lovely dresses." He'd
so you say fuck them up. What did you mean?
Literally slash at them.
Right.
Some of the time, with the lace certainly.
Yeah.
So he had this unbelievable respect. Well, what he loved doing, he loved cutting patterns and cutting clothes and fitting them on models, but he had this extraordinary irreverence where if somebody would say, if he was doing a fitting with a private client and they felt that the sleeve wasn't quite right, he'd been working all night on a jacket, say, he'd quite happily hack the sleeve off and start again with the person wearing it, thinking, A, wow, where are these scissors going to go? And B, he's worked all night on this and hand sewn it and now he's chopping it up. He was very kind of irreverent in a way about it while being respectful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess this picture, there's the shorn jewellery, there's the tailoring, and there's the lace dress, there's the romance, there's the dark romance that was established right at the beginning, as were Bumpsters. I don't think it's all that common for people to have established signatures that clearly, that early on.
Right. And why do you think, because there is as you say, it's a signature and goes all the way through, there is a sort of the military, the sharp cut of the military jacket, there's a formality
Partly because
of
of
it.
his training, because he was Savile Row trained, and I can't remember because I'm not good enough at Savile Row, but either Jeeves and Hawkes or Anderson Shepherd, you might know, are specialists in military. So he worked specifically on those clothes. But I think he loved the formality of tailoring, and I think he felt that to be able to fuck things up, you had to know how to classically do them in the first place. And that actually is like an artist as well. That's like it's like the person who goes up to Picasso and says, well, I could have done that. And it's like, no, you don't understand.
Yeah.
This man could have painted his way out of the Sistine Chapel quite easily, but he chose to do it like this. And I think Lee was always interested in the formality of tailoring, in the structure of tailoring, in pattern cutting. And he wanted to show that he could do it in order, in a way, to undo it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, military tailoring in particular was like soft armour for Lee.
Yeah.
It made women feel protected, strong, fierce, powerful.
Yeah, because there's a lot of protection in those outer layers. That sort of, as you say, the sort of formality of that. I mean, I love military clothing too.
But any McQueen jacket, if you put on a McQueen jacket, you feel, you stand in a different way. You stand up straight. You elongate your neck, 'cause otherwise it disappears because of the shoulder. It makes you behave in a different way. It feels like armour.
But why the love of aristocracy? Why the love of tradition and formality and uniform? It's a very, for a young working class boy, I can't see quite the connection in what I know.
Well, that's an interesting question, and I haven't really thought about it. I mean, I think Izzy showed Lee a whole different world. She opened up his world.
Right.
Not because Izzy was posh necessarily, although Izzy was posh, but because she was posh and open-minded. So, she lived in what to Lee must have seemed on one level a gilded world.
Yeah.
But there was nothing gilded about Izzy. Izzy was, had the same fragility, the same difficulties in a way. They weren't the same, no two people are the same, but they clearly sort of met on different levels. I guess, I'm trying to think, I'm thinking of a much later show, The Princess Who Lived in the Tree, which was about the young Queen Elizabeth's dress. And Hartnell, and he slightly took it with a pinch of salt, I think. I think he thought that privilege was slightly ridiculous. I don't think he ever, would fully have jumped into that world. However, the beauty of it, the pageantry, the ceremony, the ritual, he was definitely fascinated.
Yeah. So the role of the aristocracy originally was as the educators, the protectors, of general society. I mean, they were there as very much in a way that is his role with him.
Yeah.
That sounds awfully patronising, but she educated him in those things that she knew.
She opened his eyes to things that he would probably not have had his eyes open to by that point.
But he loved them.
Yeah.
And that was, he became...
He loved everything though. He didn't love everything, that's wrong. He wanted to know about everything. He was an absolute sponge, like a child.
Yeah.
Like when you talk to a child and you just think, wow, they've got this unbelievable ability to take it all in and retain it. He was like that right to the end of his life. And so I think, the extreme difference in Izzy's world and Lee's world, and the fact that Izzy was actually so generous and open with her world.
Yeah.
Izzy's story was a pretty amazing story.
Absolutely.
And Lee would have been completely wowed just by her story, but the fact that she took him to her home and that they did falconry together and, I think, probably expanded his vision enormously. But I don't think the English aristocracy were Lee's favourite.
Right.
Because, he felt a bigger, I think, and more profound association with Scotland.
Yeah.
And he didn't like, because of his, I can't remember, and that's really bad of me. I think it's his dad's ancestry, but that could be wrong. His ancestry is Scottish.
Okay, right.
On his mother or father's side. And Highland rape, and later the Widows of Culloden, were about the raping of the Highlands by the British.
Yeah.
So the imagery there was more about fucking up tartan and lace.
Yeah.
But equally, it was a war, and Lee was obviously very interested in war. In Dante, he apparently, I can't work out the truth of the story. That's why I'm reading everything, because everybody tells a different story.
Yeah,
apparently, according to one book, I knew the story, Don McCullin.
Yeah.
Lee loved that imagery.
Yeah.
The show was about, devastation, war, and religion.
Yeah.
He asked Simon Unglis to take Don McCullin's imagery and print it on clothes.
Yeah.
One account is that he spoke to the agent and they said no, and he did it anyway.
Yeah.
Another account, which I thought was the truth, but I don't know, was that Lee just liked the look of it and said print that.
Possibly.
But the point, it sounds more likely, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But the point is that Don McCullum didn't like it, and those clothes had to be destroyed. They never went into production.
I wonder if Don McCullum regrets that.
They became friends and did an interview together.
Right.
They did an interview, I think, in Harper's Bazaar, which was really inspired.
Right.
And they talked to each other, and that hatchet was buried. But I don't know the English aristocracy. I don't know. It's a really interesting question. I suspect the opulence and the formality and the ritual and the codes, which is also something that you're very interested in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dress codes.
Yeah.
Those strict dress codes. Lee was definitely.
He's not a Bailey character, in the way that Bailey was a sort of
cheeky chappy. No,
he wasn't that at all.
No,
much so. Okay.
I mean, there was an extraordinary refinement to Lee.
Yeah.
That I think sort of blew you away, because it definitely wasn't the first. The first impression was the cheeky chappy.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was this East End cheeky chappy who also happened to be gay.
Yeah.
Who didn't appear gay in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Tim Blanks told me a story that he went to a gay club with Lee, which obviously I never did that side of things.
Yeah.
He went to a gay club with Lee really early on, and the girl on the door looked at Lee and went, "You're not gay. You're not coming in here."
Really?
But so Lee came across like that, but he was gay, and completely separately from the fact that he was gay, he was also incredibly refined.
Yeah.
But it's almost like he almost worked to hide that a lot of the time. Certainly until he knew someone.
Yeah.
That kind of gentleness and sensitivity and refinement was something that maybe you only learnt about when you knew him.